Hi, I'm making this video due to a request on the Unreal Engine forums, and I will be focusing on able ability system and how to set up proper first-person animations for melee swings. So first of all, we're talking about this plugin. I really highly recommend it. It's in my personal opinion, and multiple use cases, a lot better than the gameplay ability system provided by Epic Games. It's a lot easier to work with, and it is just completely amazing. So let's see what we are dealing with here. So this is how the setup will look like when we are done. You can see my stamina on the top, and in the top right corner you can see my armor class, and this is part of the um, open D20 project that I was building for some time, and I will come back to this project soon, but I had to swap the entire animation system. It's a mess. And yeah, so if we hit 4, we switch to the longsword animation, and it is just a blend of the top layer of the body to first person animations that you can see here. And you have IK hand swings when you're aiming up and down and on the sides. You can see that the hilt is moving with the hands. You have secondary animations. When you are moving, there is an extra layer of IK that is also switching the hands position. You can sprint, which is ability based, and you can see that it cost me 3 stamina to start sprinting. You can guard with right mouse button, which will also cost some stamina, and it will increase my armor to 12, and after 3 seconds it will branch to a longer holden defense, and will increase my armor by another 2. When I let go, I will still have this armor for 3 seconds. If I just click guard for a very short time and let go, I will get the 2 armor at the cost of stamina. Now with left mouse button, I can start a melee swing, and depending on the locomotion I am at, so I am moving forward, backward, or on the sides, I will prepare a different pose. So I was moving forward, I prepared this pose. Now I'm not playing secondary animations, so I got a lot better aim, and there's less additive to this pose. And when I let go of the left mouse button, I will perform a stab. However, I can also prepare an attack, and with right mouse button I can cancel it. And it's a cancel. I can also start doing a defense and cancel with left mouse button. So um, primary and secondary triggers, they cancel each other out, so you can always cancel an ability while performing it. I will show how this is set up. So I can prepare a swing, and if I have enough stamina, I will then make the swing, but I can also make a fast swing. So if I just hit, I will perform a very fast swing. So the ability is 3 parts. One is the prepare of the attack, the second is the hold, that is a looping ability, and the third one is the release of the attack. And if I do a release before I get to the looping ability, I will perform a quick attack. And this is not based on anim montages, this is actually based on anim graph. So let me show you how it's being set up. Here you have all the anim graphs in this project. The base anim graph is a complete mess. This is why I switched to subgraph settings, because otherwise you have just this monstrosity. But what you need to understand is that we are just blending weapon poses on top of the base pose, and the base pose is one of picked poses: rifle, bow, and sword poses. And what is important is here. So this is the longsword animation graph. we have two state machines that are similar, so they are standing and standing defensive, and they have a simple setup of idle, move, there is a stop animation and a sprint. Oh, by the way, you can also, while sprinting, you have different animations. So this is the sprinting for the sword, and if I go defense and sprint, oh wait, I need to have stamina. Oh, I cannot sprint while defending because the defense is blocking sprint action. So yeah. So sprint is only when I actually have a weapon, and there's none when I have defensive pose. So how do I blend between defensive stance and standard stance? Like I blend on all ability states, so defense and non-defense, by gameplay tags. So my abilities, they give my character a gameplay tag to the gameplay tag container and remove this tag when the ability ends. And then I am checking if I have proper tag, for example, ability keyword defense, to go into defensive mode and show it here. And why I'm doing this, it's because if I use animation montages for abilities, I will have abilities that will work with a single skeleton. And if I try to run this ability on a different skeleton, for example, a dragon or a spider, if I try to use defense on spider, it would not trigger any animation. But if it's only triggering a gameplay tag, I can have any animations I have that are specific to a different skeleton and different character types. There is the jump. There is the IK setup for the hand. So on leaning, I do simply modify the hand R, and hand R is leading the left hand. So whatever I do on the right hand, the left hand position will correct itself in relation to the right hand. So all the IK I do on both hands, I have to do on just one hand. Same goes for the bow pose and any other poses that I have in this project. And this is the important part. This is the melee. So if I have ability keyword melee, any type of melee, I go to this state machine. And this is how it looks like. It's a bit intimidating at first, but don't worry. So there's a conduit that is leading to front start, right start, left start, and back start. All of them are being set up in the same way. So if I have gameplay tag melee start and my direction of movement is in between certain angles, I go to this pose. If I have gameplay tag melee start and my direction is in between those angles, I go into this pose, and so on and so on. And from those poses, when I do the start, I do fast attack if I have attack ability keyword melee fast. I go into hold if I have ability keyword melee loop. And obviously here it will be ability keyword melee finish. And it just goes through this loop. And I can make this loop for any skeleton, any character, and I could have completely different animations set up. And I could have, for example, more than 4 directions. I could have 8 directions, or I could have just 2 directions, or I could implement it with just one set of abilities, however I want. So this is how the animations are being set up. Let's look into the abilities themselves. Now, because of how I set up the animations and that I have all those different animation states, I need less abilities. I only need 4 abilities because they trigger different animations based on the character context. And the context is movement direction at this example. So there is less abilities than attacks overall. So let's get here, abilities, and let's go into, well, first a simple example, mobility, sprint, how sprint works. You can see on the timeline it does nothing. So let's go to the graph. And on the graph, you see that it actually does something. First of all, it's getting the owner of the ability context, and the owner is usually the character that has the able ability component. And then I am trying to reduce stamina. And in order to be able to even trigger this ability, there is a can ability execute function that you can override. And most of those functions are pretty useful. So I can start the ability if I have certain execution cost that is part of this ability, and execution cost for sprint is 3 stamina. So I am checking if I have enough stamina, and if I have enough stamina, I return true because I can execute sprint. And I can only sprint when my velocity is greater than my walk speed. So if I am, for example, sneaking, I cannot start sprinting and I cannot change animations to sprinting. The second one that I do is can ability loop, and I am just checking if my speed of locomotion is not lower than my run speed. So basically, if I am sprinting and I am slowing down and stopping, my sprint ability will break and also stop, because I don't want to play sprinting motion when my speed is very low. And on the ability itself, I'm doing just some cleanup of setting up, speed and stuff like that. But the important thing is I'm using this event of try add tag, and I am adding ability keyword sprint, and then I am removing ability keyword sprint if the ability ends, if the ability is interrupted or is branched. And I could actually, no, I had to use separate execution for each of those because I am using context from this trigger. So that's why I'm repeating myself so much here. But it would be possible to just make a macro out of it, and macros works great in abilities. There's no problem with that. So let's see the ability setup itself. So execution cost, it is my variable, and it also has a tag container that says that it cannot have tags defense. So if I am defending, I am in full defense, I cannot start sprinting. Simple as that. So the execution cost is 3. There's this one tag. Length of the ability is 0.1 second. So every 0.1 second, I am checking if this this ability should loop or not. And it is executing this can loop execute. So it is checking for my speed. So if my speed every 0.1 second drop below certain velocity, I will stop this ability immediately. So the ability is also passive because I want it to be able to stack with active abilities. The max stack is 1, so it's not adding any stacks, and when it's reapplied, it's refreshing the duration. It is a looping ability, as I said, so on each 0.1 loop end, it is seeing if it should continue the loop and execute again, execute again, execute again. And it's actually very light to check if it's executing, and even though it's checking 10 times a second, it's still better than doing logic on tick, trust me. I could increase this value, but 0.1 is good value when you hit an obstacle and you stop moving for 0.1 second, you just stop sprinting, and this is how it should work. It was a value I set up because of aiming down sight and testing other things. And also this ability got 2 tags. One that is ability type extraordinary. This is just for my setup. The second is ability keyword sprint. So for example, I could have a different ability that is for example called spell slow, and slow would check the ability component for an array of active abilities, and it would cancel every ability that has a keyword, ability keyword sprint. So if I have different sprints, I have, for example, a monk sprint and a standard character sprint, or I have sprints that increase sprinting speed more than usual, they all would have this keyword and they all would be cancelled out. So this is a very simple example. Let's go into melee. I got only 4 abilities for melee. So let's go with melee start. Melee start has a branch, and this branch is on input. If I have an input of primary trigger, then it will branch. Okay, so if I have an input of primary trigger that is negated, so I am not holding the primary trigger, I let go of the primary trigger, it will branch immediately to default a melee fast. So it will branch into this ability. However, if I do not let go of the primary trigger and I get to this point of the ability, I get to this branch, and this branch is just checking for the same thing but not negating. You see, this is also primary trigger. So I am holding primary trigger and I am still holding it. When this happens, I go to melee hold ability. And that's all that this ability does. So it is just checking for the duration of 1.35 seconds if I am still holding the attack button or I don't cancel it. And there is more logic to it here. So I always have a override of ability can execute. And here the ability can execute is getting the owner, and through interface calls I am getting the stats component, and I am checking if my stamina cost, which is here, which is also 3 to execute, double that if I have enough stamina. Why double that? Because the start of the melee swing costs you 3 stamina, but I also know that the fast swing also costs 3 stamina. So you need to have at least 6 stamina to go into this state. There's a lot of gameplay design that is behind this logic, but what you need to know is that you should have some ability cost that you check on execution if you can even start the ability. So for example, you could check if you are alive to start melee swing, or if you have weapon equipped from your owner character. You just checking if this ability is even triggerable in any way. And if you go to the event graph, I do the same thing. So on ability start, I add tag, and this tag is ability keyword melee start. And when this ability ends, I am immediately removing this tag. So I made this tag a variable just so I can use it multiple times without putting in by hand. So this, and then we go to melee hold. So on melee hold, this is a looping passive ability that is 4 seconds long, so I am not checking for branching condition too much. And on input of primary trigger negated, so letting go of the primary trigger. So you prepared your heavy attack, you are in the looping one, so you already know that your attack is prepared. When you let go of the primary trigger, it will execute a swing. So it will go into melee end, so the heavy swing. You can execute the quick swing only from the melee start, only on this, so on the first second of the preparation of the attack. If you hit 1 second, you go into this and you execute the heavy swing. And here channel condition is always true, so you can only branch, and you can, let's go here, and you do the same thing. So you add a tag, keyword melee loop, remove tag on ability end, interrupt or branch. And I don't think there's much more to it. Yeah. Okay, and let's go to the melee end. And the melee end is an active ability, just like all melees. All melees are active, they are not passive. This is quite important. And you can have only one active ability at a time. So for example, when you are looping this melee hold ability, you cannot play a different ability. So when I have it set up in my character like this, that if you try to play another active ability and you have already a playing ability, you just cancel the ability you're playing at the moment. And let's go here to the melee end. Melee end has nothing here, and on the graph it can execute if you have enough stamina, so it is taking 3 stamina, just like the fast swing that we'll go into, and it is reducing the stamina by 3, so by the cost, and it is adding a tag keyword melee finish, and this tag in the anim graph finish. This tag, appears in the tag container for just a fraction of a second. It's basically 1 frame, because when you go into this ability, this melee end, this ability has 1 second. Okay, so this tag exists only for 1 second, but we need it to exist only for a fraction of a second to trigger this, and the go back is just an automated rule based on animation. So when the animation is almost ready to finish, we are going back to the idle weapon pose. So let's get back to the melee end. Let's go to the graph, and we're doing the same. So just adding tags, and can execute, like I said, just reducing the cost and checking if I have enough stamina. So if by any chance I executed the preparation of the attack with less than 6 stamina, I don't know how that would be possible, but let's say I would, it would try to trigger melee end if I don't have stamina. So for example, I got hit by something and my stamina got reduced. The ability would not run, it would just stop. So if I have a hold and I don't have enough stamina to execute melee end, it would go to the ability and it will check this condition. And if this condition returns false, it will just immediately execute ability interrupted. So in just the case that the ability started, I added the tag, it will remove the tag immediately. Actually, even before ability start, that would just hit the interrupted. And the last thing is melee fast, and melee fast also has nothing here. It's an ability that got 1.2 second long. It is active and it is not looping. If you go into the graph, you can see the same thing with the gameplay tags, and there's also a can't execute with a stamina cost of 3. And yeah, that's it. Like the handling of the melee is all done here in the anim graph. I can isolate this anim graph and upload it, but it will not work as I cannot upload the animations that I'm using here. By the way, I'm using the Cobalt FPP animation pack, and it's a very good pack. I got just few issues with it, but in general, that's a very nice animation pack for melee swings. And yeah, the entire setup looks like this. I have jump, land, walk, sprint. While sprinting, I can prepare a melee swing, I can release it, I can go into defense, and I can sprint in the defense, which is just increasing the animation speed. I can go from defense to non-defense sprinting, and I can prepare an attack again, and I can execute it. And if I have enough stamina, I can execute a fast attack that is taking the stamina out. So yeah, and if I don't have stamina, I cannot do anything. I can cancel ability out by holding the other mouse button. I can cancel any ability at any point, and it is, you know, just contextual. And this is how you use able ability system. It's an amazing thing. You just set up few abilities, and you are very, you know, you just have to think that you have to use every of those events that are on default, and you have to be wary of what functions to override, and you don't even need this graph to execute, because you can have different contexts that are being used on different characters in a different way. Thanks for listening, and see you guys soon.